Hi, in today's lesson we're going to take a look at a couple of physics concepts, speed versus velocity and distance versus displacement. Now in physics, speed and velocity are very different concepts. Even though conceptually they mean something very similar, there's one key difference. When you're talking about speed, you're talking about something that just has a magnitude, which we call a scalar quantity, whereas when you're talking about velocity, you're talking about something that is a vector quantity. And what that means when something is a vector is it means that direction matters. Now, in order to measure speed or to measure velocity, the units that we're used to hearing, probably most commonly from driving, is we hear about speed in terms of miles per hour. But speed and velocity can be measured in any sort of distance or displacement over time comparison. You can talk about speed and velocity in miles per hour, meter per second, feet per hour, yards per day. Any distance or displacement measure divided by time is going to be a way in units to refer to speed and velocity. Now when we're calculating speed and when we're calculating velocity, the calculation is going to be relative to how much distance is covered over a particular unit of time. So in the case of speed, your speed is equal to your distance over your time. Velocity is going to have a very similar equation. But there's going to be one key change here, and that's that second point that we have on the board, distance versus displacement. Distance just has to do with the total amount of ground that's covered. Displacement has to do with where you end up relative to your starting point. So for example, when you're talking about distance, if I were to walk 3 feet this way and then turn around and walk 3 feet back this way, the distance that I've covered is a total of 6 feet. However, the displacement, if you look at where I am relative to my starting point, I'm exactly where I started, and the displacement in that example would be 0. So when you measure velocity, rather than measuring it in terms of distance over time, you're actually measuring displacement over time. And that's one of the key factors differentiating speed versus velocity. And that's one of those things that sometimes intuitively doesn't make sense compared to what we know from our daily lives, because when you think of velocity, you think, oh, if I'm traveling at a high speed, then that must mean I'm going at a high velocity, and those aren't always equal. They're not always the same concept, because if you travel 100 miles an hour for 1 hour heading north, and then 100 miles an hour for 1 hour heading south, your total displacement will be 0, because you end up right where you started. So your velocity in that example would be 0, even though your speed for that entire trip would be 100 miles per hour. And that's one of the key points to differentiate between when we're first learning about our velocity equations in physics. Please watch our other videos to see an elaboration on those concepts and equations with some practice problems. And if you have more questions, you can visit our website at www.sandersontestprep.com. The link is in the description below. Thanks for watching.